Yeah, your butt wire's off.
All right, so I'm back in Vermont for the holiday weekend, 4th of July. We come up every year for like a week, so I'm here for the long haul. And I got the four-wheeler behind me, so I'll be doing some work on that, oil change, spark plugs, and all that normal stuff for a new machine. And then probably diagnosing a few other things for maybe future visits I can get into. And then also I brought the Holtz Forma saw with me. I haven't unboxed that yet, so the plan is to unbox that and put the 36-inch bar on it and get the Vevor chainsaw, Alaskan chainsaw mill hooked up and give that a try. So that should be fun. And then at the end of the week, we actually got a backhoe attachment for the Ford tractor. So that should be here just about the time we're leaving. That's coming from New Jersey on a pallet from a Facebook Marketplace purchase. So if that sounds interesting at all, just hang in there and we'll get into it. So before I even got into town, I stopped off at Lake Maury. I wanted to go to the Sunoco in town because they sell Ethanol-Free 91, I think for all the boats. So if you watched my last video, I went to a different station in Chelsea that sells Ethanol-Free 87 that I got for my four-wheeler and the riding mower. But for the higher compression on the chainsaw, I wanted to have 91 or above. So this worked out as I was right on my way to Corinth anyway. So my first order of business was adding a battery kill switch. I got a set of 3 motorcycle style kill switches on Temu. The seller had told me there was a parasitic draw on the battery that would kill it after a few days. I do plan to track it down, but I also like the idea of disconnecting it just in case anyone tampers with it. It's just one more thing they'd have to figure out. Plus my use case is we go back and forth from here in Rockport. It's mostly sitting weeks to months at a time. And until I track it down, what's drawing the power, it just gives me some peace of mind that I won't come back to a dead battery. Next up was the mud guards. These also surprisingly came off Temu. I don't think I originally looked these up, but saw mud guards advertised to me and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So then I found the ones that would fit my 99 Foreman. My father-in-law ended up helping me remove the clips and the old bolts that got swapped out over the years. I actually ordered an assortment of like 1,000 clips separately because I thought when I ordered these cheaper mud guards, they didn't include the clips, but I ended up being surprised because they did send some. They sent 1 bag of clips or enough to do like 1 mud guard. But this actually worked out because I used the bag of clips that came with the mud guards, and then I used the matching size clips in the assorted set. Then I actually ended up using some larger sizes for where they got replaced with bolts because the holes ended up getting like ovaled out or were too large. At this point, my father-in-law switched to replacing the hitch ball with a hitch receiver adapter. The four-wheeler came with a ball attachment, but there was not a hitch receiver. So I found a receiver that attaches to the factory ball mount. You just remove the ball and the bolt and then bolt on the receiver in its place. I also wanted to be able to attach pin attachments because I got one of those garden carts that you can convert the handle to a pin receiver on like a riding lawnmower. So the ball hitch that I got had a ball, a fixed pin for attaching straps, and a 5/8 pin receiver. Also, this will end up coming in handy later in the video. Once the mud guards were off, I decided now would be a good time to clean it. I had also purchased some Flood Penetrol. Have you ever seen people doing the torch trick to restore old plastics? This is sort of like that, except the color should stay longer and it won't make your plastics brittle. The green really isn't actually that bad. I think the red plastics probably fade more, but the black could definitely use a touch-up though. The Penetrol said to wait 12 to 24 hours, but if you couldn't tell from the video, it was like 85 to 90 degrees that day, and it was no longer tacky within about an hour in most places. So I went ahead and I attached the new mud guards, and as I mentioned earlier, having that clip assortment really came in handy here. I was worried when I realized I only had the 1 bag that came with the mud guards, plus what was available in that size in the assortment. So I tried to actually salvage what I could when I removed the old clip, but in the end, I actually had more than enough just because so many of the holes were larger. I actually have to go through again, find the clips that popped out and size them up again to the next ones up. Here my father-in-law is unboxing and assembling the garden cart. I had actually ordered this before I bought my four-wheeler. I knew I wanted a four-wheeler, so I think I got this and the truck ramps ahead of time, just trying to sort of plan ahead on some of the things I would want or need. That said, I'd been looking at this one and the 2-wheel version, which are like the actual tow behind ATV versions. I'll post a screenshot so you know what I mean. I don't know if it would actually be any better, but what I was gonna say is this one is definitely tippy. I have a Gorilla Cart branded cart I bought years ago. That one I checked is like 34 inches wide versus this one being like 29 inches wide. And I used that one at home this weekend since I've been home, and it's definitely way more stable. So much so that I'm thinking I'm gonna load my Gorilla Cart up and bring the other one back to Rockport. But even when using that new cart by hand, granted the property is not super flat, but we loaded the grill on it and we were pushing it to the backyard, and it just feels not super stable. So I'm wondering if maybe the actual two-wheel style ATV trailers are better. I don't actually know what the pros and cons are between the two. I was just thinking that with the garden cart, it could be used by hand as well, which we actually did. We used it already a few times just by hand around the yard in addition to towing it. So it wasn't a bad purchase. I just wish I got the bigger one like my Gorilla cart. Here I'm nearly at the end of the pile of stuff. I'm installing the back rack basket, which you really need. I'd been bringing batteries down and back up last visit from the Wi-Fi solar trail cam battery box that I built. I had strapped them on the front rack because they had to be recharged. So I had to do that again this visit, and it was so much easier just tossing them in the back. Not to mention last time I did, it was at night and it was blocking my headlights. So I have a front basket picked out, but just waiting on a coupon before I order more stuff on Temu. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, especially with these cheap metal outdoor items, they're going to rust. I was kind of planning for this in my head between the front and the back basket and the garden cart. But the back rack specifically, it came in two pieces. One was the basket and the other one was the flat piece that sits on the existing back rack. And the flat piece was nested inside of the basket. And it must have been jammed in there because we could not get it out. It was obviously supposed to come out, but for whatever reason, the geometry or whatever, it just would not budge. Anyway, we got it out, but not without taking chunks of paint off. So as I was saying, you can't really depend on the coating in these cheap metal products, especially for outside. They do a powder coating, but they do like no prep. So a lot of the times it just comes off in large flakes. So my plan is to repaint the existing racks and then redo the new ones. I'm not going to go into detail here, but I think I can improve on what's there without like having to strip it down 100% back to bare metal. And I'll probably include that in one of my later videos when I get around to it. And putting the final touches on here are the little red reverse button cover, because you know it's the little details that matter sometimes. Anyway, I just wanted to show the before and the after in the woodshed. This is kind of how it goes with Temu, at least for me. You spend a bunch of time just adding stuff to your cart while you wait for a good promo or coupon, and then when they hit, you load up and you kind of get buried in boxes, and then unboxing stuff kind of as you need it because there's just so much. So the woodshed was, in this case, chock full, and while I wanted to play with all my new things, my wife and mother-in-law also wanted everything cleared out before people showed up for the 4th of July party. So that added a little extra motivation to stay focused in getting all this stuff unboxed. And here's the final walk around. I have to say, it wasn't that bad before, but it's just nice to clean things up and add a little creature comforts, like the saddlebags. It's just nice to throw my phone in there and not have to feel like it's gonna fall out of my pocket, or have a place to put my drink, or like a place to keep the GMRS radio, or the back racks, as I was saying before. Just little details to kind of improve the overall experience of using it, and then make it look nice, because just because it's 27 years old doesn't mean that you need to treat it like garbage. Moving on to other tasks, the Milkhouse cam went out, so I had to climb up there to fix that. I'd actually ordered last summer one of those man lift boxes that you can slide onto forklifts. I ordered that after we finished painting the front of the house last summer, thinking it would be a good thing to have. So my father-in-law, I put that together right before this, but then realized it would probably be just as easy just to throw a ladder up there. But now at least I have that out of the box and assembled for when we want to use it. So just one more thing accomplished.
Thankfully, I got the bush hog connected. I'm going to go up that nut tomorrow. I'm going to go up here where the hay equipment is. Up on the bank.
And this was kind of cool, or rather I hadn't planned for it anyway. Next up, my father-in-law wanted to move the old hay equipment and bush hog that area. So this was actually the area I mentioned earlier that the new hitch would come in handy. Now, I don't have any background in farm equipment, but my father-in-law had said that earlier, my four-wheeler, we could probably move the dump rake with it or move it by hand even. So I grabbed my four-wheeler, and sure enough, we were able to drop and bolt a couple washers and a couple nuts, and it moved it no problem. After that, we pulled up to the side delivery rake. This was in rougher shape as the timbers around the hitch were rotted and the tires at the back were flat and collapsed. And we only needed to move that a few feet, so this we just threw a strap around it. And I know it's out of the frame, so you probably can't see that one. And then it was time to move the harrows. This was a bit heavier. It didn't want to move as easy. So we realized that when we were trying to move it back, the pin that locked the front and the rear together had actually broke off. So, but once we fixed that, I was able to move it. So overall, the four-wheeler is definitely starting to come in handy, which is cool because I think my father-in-law at first maybe looked at it more as a toy for riding around the property. But after using it for moving the hay equipment, he definitely saw some value in it, which was cool. Oh, and I didn't get any footage of this, but the winch only had like 10 feet of cable on it. So I restrung that with like 50 feet of quarter-inch synthetic winch line. And at this point, things slowed down a little bit. More people started arriving. We took the kids on a couple of wagon rides up to the back pasture and up to the campsite. We grilled, and my wife even got me to clean myself up before anyone arrived. So I don't have any footage of this, but one thing my father-in-law likes to say is it's temporary. So once things started winding down and people started leaving on Sunday, my father-in-law pointed out when we were putting the wagon away that the back beam had rotted out in the wagon shed. So we went under the shop and scavenged enough wood to stop the bleeding. But he has this saying that I think his father-in-law used to say to him when he was still alive and tending to the property. He'd say it's temporary, and to which my father-in-law says to me now, as he points something out, he says that was temporary, or this was temporary, which also meant to be a testament to my wife's grandfather. He'd say he had more talent in his pinky than I do when it comes to some of the things he did on this property. Anyway, my wife never met her grandfather, but getting to know the stories of him through my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, it's pretty cool. Anyway, speaking of temporary, I had noticed the space to the right of the wagon shed. So I went off, I scavenged a bit of wood, I started tacking it together until I had something that might function how I intended. Now, it wasn't pretty and it wasn't the most functional, but it did the job. Our very own fuel station. I'd been planning to build a new structure so I could get the fuel cans high enough off the ground where I could pull up and fuel up the different machines. But I needed a place to store the new garden cart anyway, and I figured this will work for now. So it will have to do until I can come up with a non-temporary solution. So it was finally time to get to that oil change. Everyone had finally gone and it was just me, so I ended up working late since I had nothing better to do. I started by removing the plow attachment plate because that was in the way of the oil drain plug. It was held on by 4 bolts, and luckily the nuts were welded onto the frame, so I didn't have to manage getting the nuts on and off too. Anyway, I was removing them and I realized that it would probably be easier if I only removed 3 and then pivoted on the 4th versus trying to have to hold it up by myself and thread the bolts back in. Also, I had wanted to warm it up, or I hadn't yet, so I ended up removing 2 and then tightening the other 2 back up. I had had my log dollies down to the house over the winter, and I'd ran them back up to the sawbuck with the trailer earlier, but I still needed to cover them up with a tarp, so I figured that would probably be sufficient enough to get the engine warm and loosen up any sludge or sediment that I'd want to come out when I drain the oil. As I was driving back down, I had remembered that the school bus cam had been offline, which was weird because I thought it had originally came back online when I had recharged the batteries back up. So it was the last component in the solar leg, and I could see that no lights were coming from the router or the camera. So I went up to the second to last camera, and I could see that they were still indeed working. So I just walked the line, and sure enough, it looked like the line had got pulled enough that it came undone just enough, which was surprising because it had been just the other day. So what are the odds it would happen like while we were all there? Good odds, I guess. Anyway, after I fixed the break in the line, I went down to the last camera, and I could see that things were going back online now, so problem solved. And on my way down, before I go back to the oil change, I decided to close up the gate because I only have another day left and I'm the last one here. And I figured I might as well close it up now before I forgot. Anyway, once I got back to the house, I removed the plow bracket and pulled the drain plug, pulled the filter cover, I put back in the new filter and closed it up. I reinstalled the old drain plug with the new washer and then used a little paper funnel they included. Took a little more than the manual called for, so maybe it was a little low to start. Anyway, at this point, I think it was probably about 10 p.m. and tomorrow's my last day. So I think I'm gonna leave the air filter till next time. I'm also gonna leave the spark plug and the carburetor adjustments till next time because I wanna do them at the same time, as I suspect the carb is a little rich, as I'm able to start it without choke. So that'll have to be for next time, I guess. Oh, and this Sicklebar mower, my father-in-law picked this up for $200 and we brought it over back around Thanksgiving time. Anyway, I'd said to him this visit, we should really try to open it up and get a look at the manual to figure out what we'll need before we go to use it. That way, hopefully we won't show up next visit wanting to use it and find we need to do half a dozen things before we can. Anyway, we let it down, got it figured out for how it needed to be connected, loosened up some frozen bolts with a little heat and hit the rest with PB Blaster. I went through, I greased all the fittings, and we were able to move the belt by hand and see the blades move pretty good after we worked the oil in, which was pretty promising. So considering my father-in-law said at the start of the visit, if we can't get it working, then I'll just sell it for scrap. So that's promising for next visit, I think. Okay, so now this is the real reason for why I had to stay behind. This is the backhoe that I bought. I found it on Facebook Marketplace, and it was the actual Ford backhoe that was sold with our tractor at the time. I'd been looking for a bit, and I had assumed I would have to just get something and do a bunch of fabrication for it to fit, because finding the original backhoe was like next to impossible. I knew I didn't want a 3-point backhoe either, because they put a lot of stress on the back end of the tractor. So it had to be a subframe mount if I was going to get one. And this person only wanted $1,500 for it, which was pretty decent, considering I would have to do little to no fabrication to hook it up. The only issue is that it was in New Jersey. But I figured I'd just call the guy up and just see. So I got on the phone with him and he gave me the background. He got the tractor about 25 years ago and it came with the backhoe. He has a bigger backhoe now, or a bigger tractor, and he just doesn't use it as much, or he wasn't using it as much and had been sitting for a few years. He said he greased it regularly. He was pretty decent to talk to. So now I knew I had to get it because it would be too good to pass up and not have the original backhoe to go with the tractor. It just kind of felt like they needed to be together. So, however, I was still not really in a situation where I could drive down to New Jersey and get it myself. First of all, I don't have a trailer that's big enough. I could rent a trailer, but it was like $250. And at that point I was hoping maybe I could get it delivered. I was imagining it would be around $400 to $500. So I said to the guy, I said, I'm in Mass now and I'm going to Vermont. If I can identify someone to come and pick it up, would that work for you? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. We can work that out. And I felt pretty good about the purchase, considering it's really not that complicated of a piece of machinery. My biggest fear was that the joints where the pins were ovaled out, if he hadn't greased it, which I asked him about, or the hydraulics would have to be rebuilt, which still isn't that bad, as you can just bring the piston to a hydraulic shop or replace the lines yourself. Anyway, I went online to a couple sites, and I went to UShip and I went to FreightStar. And I entered in what I was shipping, where it was coming from, where it needed to go, and when it needed to be there by. And then by the next morning, I'd received several quotes and a question. The quotes were all like $1,100 to $1,400, and this was pretty far off from my guess of $400 to $500. The one question I received, though, was from a guy who had a delivery in Maine coming up, and he asked if I could wait until after July 4th, which is the date that I used since I knew I was going to be there. So I replied and I said, well, I guess it depends on what the price would be, because I'm not there regularly. So he came back and he said he could do it for $1,000 because the platform UShip takes 20%. So I went back to him and I said, sorry, that's really not going to work. I'm really aiming for like $500. And I wasn't really expecting anything back from him or anything. I was just trying to reply to be polite, just to not like ghost him. So then he comes back and he's maybe not even 10 minutes later and he says that he could do $700 and he's willing to work with people. So at that point I'm thinking about what he had said about UShip taking 20%. And then also in the meantime, I had read a bunch of horror stories about UShip and how they really don't protect you, and like maybe they would give you $15 if something went wrong. And And by now I had already read I'd read this individual's reviews, and I got a feel that he was like an independent guy with his own truck. All his reviews were pretty good, and he'd been in the platform for like 12 years and actually done quite a few deliveries. So at that point I was like, okay, if the platform isn't going to do anything for me, and this guy seems pretty reputable, then why not just work with him directly? So I responded one more time and I said, hey, not sure if you ever work outside the platform, but if you do, give me a call or a text. And then about 15 minutes later, I get a text saying, hey, this is Devin. I jumped on the call. So I spoke with Aaron out of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and he was very decent. He told me most people actually look him up, and he prefers to work outside of U-Ship anyway. And he would do my delivery for the 500. And he actually was delivering a surplus military generator up to Maine on one of those GovPlanet auction sites, or from one of those GovPlanet auction sites, I should say. Anyway, I asked him again if 500 would be all right, and he agreed to it, but I didn't want to lowball him so much that he'd resent the job. But he told me it was good since he was already making 1,000 on the generator, so this kind of worked out perfectly. Anyway, I had pulled the tractor out earlier and I put the forks on. As after they loaded it in New Jersey, I talked to the previous owner, and he had said that he was able to use his forks instead of a chain to put it on the trailer. So I figured, okay, that's good to know, because originally I was thinking I would have to lift it with chains because of how long and awkward it was. So I figured with forks it would be just a little bit more stable. So anyway, I got under it with the forks. We wrapped a chain around it, and unfortunately I don't have the crossbars for my forks that hold them together. It's just held in by the friction fit with the bolts that you tighten down onto the bucket, and that's when things started to go sideways. So it's a little hard to see here, but at a certain point the forks kind of like splay out, and it doesn't actually stop us. In hindsight though, I think I should have wrapped a strap or some chain around the forks, ideally from the start, but definitely after they started to splay out, to stop them from moving more. Anyway, the other issue that we kept on having is that every time I went to lift it, I could get it all off the deck except for the bucket on the backhoe. So much so that my back tire started to lift. So I actually went in and grabbed my four-wheeler, I attached the winch onto the drawbar just to add a couple hundred pounds of counterweight to the back. Then we were going to try to have him drive forward. This was actually his idea. And just kind of let the bucket like ride along the deck, but also like kind of clear the generator, but we couldn't clear the generator. So then when I was repositioning it, we lost the right fork and then the other. And anyway, at that point, we kind of just had to commit to like letting it down. And we ended up getting it on the ground, and we were able to stand it up by hand again. I think because the leverage of the boom is just so long, so it's actually not that bad to like manipulate. It's not that heavy. So the weird thing is that the tractor, the seller loaded it with though, is a 1710, and we have a 1910. So I figured he must have had some attachment on the back, because even with the fork issue, I wouldn't have been able to lift it with chains without the rear tires lifting. So it wasn't really the forks weren't like the main issue. The forks were kind of like the secondary issue. The main issue is that it was too heavy. Anyway, if you're looking for someone to truck your stuff, I would definitely recommend Aaron Roberts out of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I'll link to his Facebook page in the description for his business, or if you just Google Aaron Roberts shipping Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, it should come up. Oh, and one more thing he did before he left. One of the reasons I liked Aaron is so like once we got it on the ground and like he pulled his truck to like kind of get it out of the way, I was kind of like, all right, well, it's my problem now. Like I'll have to get it standing back up. So I thought I was like, all right, let me pay this guy, get him out of here. And he's like, no, I'm not going to leave it with you like this. So he spent, the extra 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, helping me like kind of get it stood back up, and just so it wasn't like laying on the ground, like how it dropped. So it just, some guys would have just been like, all right, I'm out of here. But he, he took the extra care. So I just wanted to give another shout out to Aaron, because he was pretty decent. So anyway, the backhoe was on the ground, so I felt pretty good leaving it kind of how it was, because I had to get out of there. I did take some measurements, because we're going to have to get some fittings to connect the hydraulics, and then I'm going to have to bring my welder to move those saddle brackets out a few inches to match the longer wheelbase of the 1910 versus the 1710 that it came off of. And then we'll figure out something for the loader cross frame mount, because our loader has like an extra piece of like 1/4 inch plate steel that the 17 tractor didn't have. So we'll have to make some like adaptations there. And if you're watching some of my other videos and you check out my stealth ladder rack truck hoist video, I actually shot the first half of that one before this trip. So if I haven't posted it yet, I should be posting it soon. So if you want to check that one out. And then also I didn't end up getting to the Holtz Forma saw. I know I mentioned it in the beginning of the video, but that's why we call it Neva Dun Farm, because the list gets twice as long every time we go. Anyway, so watch out for those videos, because I do need to get to that. I need to get that saw working, and I do want to finish that ladder rack hoist. And yeah, so anyway, thanks again for watching, and hopefully I see you guys on the next one.